Good day. My name is Joan Hayes, and I'm a watercolorist. And today I'm working on a small painting of a little barn scene. This is where I'm working on Arches hot press 300-pound paper, starting out with it's kind of wet on wet sky. It's ultramarine blue and some Payne's gray. Um, didn't did just did a wet I just wet the paper behind the sketch of the barns so that I had a little more control, trying to keep it as loose as I can. As you notice, I'm lifting the paper, trying to let the pigment stay in the back and not move forward too much, but it does have a life of its own, so I have to dab it with a little paper towel to take the excess water out, and gives me a little more control so it doesn't run in the foreground. Not that that would be the end of the world, but it just makes it a little bit cleaner. Going back in with my ultramarine blue just to brighten up the sky. It's clearly an ominous sky. Looks like a storm is coming or leaving, however you'd like to look at it. And this one, I'm letting it run on its own. In the background, I'm liking what it's doing. Just simple, atmospheric looking sky. Going to move around the piece a little bit. While the background is still wet, I'm going to touch in with some greenery, some trees. You know, this is a small piece, and everything I do is just gestures of what's there. So I'm going to keep that wet on wet going with the green. I'm working with a sap green and a hooker's green on that, with a tiny touch of Payne's gray and a phthalo light green as well. Actually, that's a phthalo yellow green. And just going between the buildings, starting to outline the buildings a little bit, bringing that green forward into the foreground. And I have no water on that paper. I'm just working with the run from the paint and water there. If you like what I'm doing, like and subscribe. I'm doing 2 to 3 videos a week, and I'd love to have you on this journey. So here I'm just going in with some yellow ochre and some of that phthalo yellow green, and kind of mixing them together, alternating between the foreground and my trees. I think my sky is pretty much done, so now I'm going to work on the trees, concentrate on that and the foreground, and then I'll start in on the buildings as well. But working as I often do excuse me, from the background forward, bringing in a little bit of burnt sienna into that, feathering it out a little bit, just to keep it fluid. Just a light piece. Continuing to work the foreground with that burnt sienna and the sap green. Trying to keep the paint from moving up into the sky from my green that I put in the trees, and all I'm doing is basically removing the pigment from the Payne's gray and the ultramarine in the sky and dabbing it away. I come in now with a combination of a few things. I guess I can call it kind of muddy, but it's Payne's Gray and, a little ultramarine, a little bit of raw sienna, and a little bit of the Hooker's green. And again, this is a small piece, so I don't need a lot. I just need a little dab. That little dab will do you, right? And trying to finish as much as I can behind the buildings so that I can start concentrating on the structures. So now I'm going into the bright red and cad orange combined to start my barns, and just putting a basic layer down to kind of place the structure in the setting. And I'm thinking about my light source as I always do. The light is coming from the right, and so the shadow will be on the left side of the building. So I'll keep that in mind as I always try to think about the shadows, especially in these tiny little pieces. It doesn't take a lot of paint to just do a gesture. It doesn't have to be, extreme detail. It's just a little stroke can make a big difference on a little piece like this. And then I'm going in and just giving some shadows to the overhang of the roof, and trying to show in this little building to the right, also the shadow going into my roof with just straight Payne's Gray and water. And same with this other building, this other barn. I skipped ahead because these videos can get a little long. You can see I went in kind of intense with the Payne's Gray just to kind of ground that the trees in the background and the buildings. I say that a lot with my pieces grounding, but you see how it kind of makes the piece nest, the buildings nest into the setting. If I didn't have that Payne's Gray shadow effect, they would almost float on top. And I'll be honest with you, on this piece, I struggled a little bit on my foreground. I started out thinking I was going to do it like a hay field, and started this out with the yellow ochre and some of that opaque cream. And I wasn't crazy about it, so I started out with this and decided as I went that it didn't have enough interest to me, and it didn't flow with the little buildings and the trees. So I kept struggling trying to figure out what does it need. I added this, I think a little too strong on the Payne's Gray in that foreground, and you can see I'm trying to manipulate it out, which was easy to do because it was pretty wet. And I didn't mind that, but I still felt it needed something else besides just that yellow ochre kind of hay field. So I'll work that a little later and decide to change my piece just ever so slightly. Going in again with the Payne's Gray, my favorite color, and giving the final details of the shadowing. And then I'm just coming in with the orange to kind of exaggerate where the sun's coming from, and to give that real barn highlight on this piece. And again, small piece, didn't need much, just a little touch, little tiny strokes. It's fun with working with small. The positive and the negative with this is that one stroke can mess up a big area that, in these tiny little pieces, I should say, in the small area. But you get the idea. It's easy to mess up with a small piece, but they're fun to do because they're quick, and especially in doing these tutorials, I'm trying to do them on the smaller side so there's more interest. So going into that little building, just a gesture that it's there, with the roof and the shadows and the windows, going back into the windows ever so slightly with that orange again, just to finish up. And, I don't want to cover up all the little white. I like a touch of that in there. Kind of a happy accident leaving some of them. They just look like reflection or something. So pretty soon is where I decide that I'm not crazy about this foreground. And I jumped ahead and I did a wash with the phthalo yellow green and that cream, and just gave it a slight overwash on that yellow ochre wash I had put down. And now I like it. It settles it a little bit. Looks a little more in, I guess, unison with the background in the trees, and coming in with a little darker on the Hooker's green and a little bit of Payne's. Um, it just seems better to me. I'm happier with it. So, midway through, changed my mind a little bit, and that's painting at its finest. And now I'm just going in with the feather brush and trying to get some grass, little gestures of grass. And that seems to be working as well. It doesn't need to be perfectly unison all the way across or anything. That would look artificial. So I, try to wisp it around a little bit so it doesn't look like I used a paintbrush, with the same strokes. Well, I hope you've liked this little tutorial. I hope it encourages you to pick up a paintbrush and try it yourself. And I hope I can see you in the next, I hope to see you in the next painting. I appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe, and have a great day.